Hi, this is the voice of Serge Bodnarchuk, the writer and director of this movie.
Hi, this is Matthew K. Lane. I played the role of John Green.
And so, that opening shot of the film there, of Secretary of State Powell, when you've got time, you should Google him, because he was kind of this very enigmatically corrupt Secretary of State from earlier in Illinois history, like I think the 60s, but he would he was the kind of guy where when you had to re-up when you had to pay your driver license fee, you would write a check to Powell and mail it to his office, which he would put in his personal bank account and then make sure your driver's license was renewed. Anyway, it was just I thought it was an appropriate shot to open the film with because it's all about corruption in Chicago and high places. So this opening sequence was actually our first day of filming. I tried to shoot chronologically. It didn't always work out like that, but we at least got the first scene done first. And this scene we shot at the end. We had filmed other scenes that day, but then we ended the day with this first scene, and so I think the exhaustion on Matthew's face is kind of genuine.
That, and it was always probably 80 degrees in that apartment, because the window unit, the air conditioner unit, we had to shut it off every time we filmed because it made so much noise that it interfered with the sound. So we had to shut it off. And in between takes, we would all rush to the on button so we could get some relief in the room for that 10 minutes while the equipment was being moved around and repositioned for a new shot. So
the lights were hot. There's a lot more lighting just beyond the camera frame than you'd think. And for anyone wondering, that bottle of alcohol sitting on the desk there, it started with actual alcohol in it, which was less about an excuse to get... I mean, nobody wanted to get drunk on set or anything, and nobody was drunk on set. It was more about getting the color right. We poured some apple juice into a bottle, and it just didn't look right.
I remember being happy a long time.
Ultimately, I decided that I wanted a reaction to the bite of very low quality whiskey.
After 8 years of trying to better myself,
And it was
to be as
low
real
quality.
as possible. Yeah. So it was, the bite is very real. The reaction is very real.
Not to mention, in order to keep continuity, we kept having to add water to keep it at the proper level. So by the end of the shoot, he's drinking what started out as this Canadian swill, which just kept getting watered down. So it couldn't have gotten a fly drunk by the end of it.
Maybe I'd go online and glean some coping mechanisms from our peers. But everyone on here acts like their own publicist. So all I see is an unbroken parade of promotions.
So of course, all of this typing was inserted later on.
Yeah.
But fun fact, I have never been, and have never been since ever, even in pretend, on Facebook.
Yeah,
So if it was up to me to type out something, I would have to first be directed where to go. I have no idea how to navigate on that site, and I don't want to learn.
I was okay with, I was okay with starting the script with such a giant dump of naked exposition, just because it's kind of, I thought I could get away with it because this is kind of how we use social media to kind of exposit our own lives, and the fact that he deletes it, I think, was just saving my shred of dignity with a joke there. One more shot of Paul Powell, Secretary of State.
I'll tell you what, I'll text you the address.
I always love how you cut him off in mid-sentence, even when he's on the phone. So most of the sound effects in this film were recorded on set, just because my Foleying capabilities aren't that fantastic. The typing is Foleyed in, but like when he slaps the phone down on the desk, that was recorded on set. And then all these shots of the computer screen are actually me typing into my computer months later.
And me looking at a black screen with a computer that was off.
Yeah.
A laptop that was off, and I was...
That is acting.
That's a quality demonstration.
Hi. What's your name again? Tim Thompson? Right. Okay. I brought a black coffee.
So the apartment was supposed to look trashed, and I think we did a pretty good job of making it look really unkempt. But one thing I didn't count on was how much noise all that balled up paper made. If you're doing a film for the first time, don't cover the floor with a bunch of paper. Would be my advice, because it kind of wreaks hell on the sound continuity. Anyway.
And I just want you to know that even though it took a lot of hard work to get here, that I realize that this isn't the end of a journey, but the beginning. Really.
So Shane Rhodes, the actor who here in the film played Tim Thompson, John Green's assistant here. Really enjoyed working with Shane. He was a guy who had this natural ability to help you regulate any kind of overthinking of the scene and how you wanted to deliver lines. I always really appreciated how he was able to kind of calm the set a bit. And there's a scene that I have with him later in a booth in a bar, and we did a lot of discussion before scenes. I really benefited from his presence on set.
Yeah, he's got a lot of formal training, big formal background, been in a lot of plays. He knew more about acting, technical stuff about acting, than like I did, which was nice. Not to mention, he was in that scorcher of an apartment in that suit jacket for hours that day.
Well, we had a lot of scenes together, and it was important that those scenes were as cohesive as possible with just us in the room, really. With the back and forth of Green's personality and Thompson's personality.
This whole montage, which I'm really proud of, coming up with all these excuses, all these different ways that a collection call can go wrong, is if you've ever seen the movie Broken City with Mark Wahlberg, there's a similar montage towards the beginning of that film, and I'm not ashamed to say that this is heavily influenced by all that, because it's awesome and brilliant, and when I set out to make a movie about a detective, it wasn't going to be about... I didn't want it to be all about, like, following people and dames and walking into offices. I wanted it to be like, oh, he makes collection calls all day. Of course, I love your comedic timing here. The length of pauses are just perfect.
The sniffing of the bag, that wasn't premeditated. I didn't know what was in it. Like, there's donuts with something, with a filling, and there's maybe... I mean, what are the other... What did you order? I don't even know what you ordered. It was just donuts in a bag, I assumed.
Yeah.
So, I don't want to eat a jelly-filled donut by accident.
Something else that Shane was good about was he was the one who would be like, no, we can't have this corporate logo in the shot, and he'd like rotate the cups for us. So all those sketches were done by me in like 30 seconds.
Funny little story. The director and I used to work at an office. We won't go into detail about the job itself, but let's just say it was, if anything, the lasting benefit was preparation for the collection calls in particular.
Yeah.
that what you saw portrayed there is really not that far off
Yeah.
from a lot of the exchange that one would have working there with the customers. It wasn't a customer service job per se, but it was a lot of customer interaction. For lack of a better word, we'll call them customers. And those dinosaur pictures that Sarge would draw out.
He calls me Sarge.
I call him Sarge, yeah. He would draw them on his calendar at his desk, and I would come by and bother him during the day. And I noticed how great these little sketches were. So I would have him draw. I would put let's just say a phallic.
He would draw dicks on my calendar.
I would dick his calendar, and I would say, now make a dinosaur out of that, or make an animal out of that. And after a couple, I was really astonished that it would be a dick and then something else.
I would turn it,
and it would be like this.
It's not important.
This glorious elephant. That was just a great.
Tree.
It was just a great drawing on its own merit. So that's every time I look at that Journal of Dinosaurs, I always think of Sarge's calendar at work.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how much of this I'd go into, but no, not that. We're moving on. How much of what John Green says is autobiographical, and I will say that his life is a lot more dramatic than mine, but very much part of the impetus of this project was just being at a dead-end job where I made a lot of those collection calls, and it was driving me crazy. John Green was kind of lucky enough to have a case fall into his lap, which changed his life. I had to be a bit more proactive than John Green. Went out and made a movie.
Cool thing about this scene is it was the last shooting day.
Yeah, that's right.
We shot this scene last. And it was the, of course, second scene in the film. So continuity, as was mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
the continuity wasn't really something that we could adhere to, even if we wanted to, just with the schedules and even the locations. We were having to deal with that.
Yeah.
Whenever they were available, we had to do what we could when we could.
Yeah, because
it happened to be the last day of shooting for this one. So
yeah, in trying to shoot chronologically, I planned on shooting this early, but then the location couldn't find a location for it, and then it kept getting pushed, and finally we wound up shooting this.
Chronology, that's what I meant. Chronology. I'm sorry.
We wound up shooting this scene in. There's a bar in the basement of a U Chicago building, and they were kind enough to let us film there for I think it took us 5 hours to shoot this, which is actually one of our longest days of filming. We went pretty quick. But yeah, because it was the last scene that we shot, I like that we wound up shooting it last because there's a lot of subtle emotional shifts, authoritative shifts, you two coming to understand each other, that I think, 5 months of shooting before we finally shot this benefited both your performances.
Of course, yeah.
Of course, there was concerns about hair length. Lots of photos being passed around.
Yeah,
in the previous scene.
I remember the week before shooting, I said, if we're going to go back to this is the second scene in the movie. I'm taking a look at all the other film he's got in the can already. Thinking, boy, we've really got to make sure I got my hair at the right length, because it was different at that day or the time we were talking about it. I said, boy, this is 3 weeks, 4 weeks past when I needed to get a cut. I mean, I need to get this done today. But anyway, kind of on the meshing of our characters and our personality and the way that we work together, it ended up being a godsend that we were able to film this last, because this scene was very important in terms of the storytelling and the characters themselves getting to know each other, and it was hugely beneficial and helpful that we were able to work with each other in a lot of other scenes prior to shooting this, and it came off a lot more fluid and a lot more natural than had we shot it 3-4 months prior to this. That's just water in the coffee mugs as well. It was originally coffee.
Oh yeah,
and then we ran out of coffee because we had to bring it with us on set, and then we ran out, and we just had to go to the water. So
This scene was originally scripted to take place in a diner, and I contacted every single diner in the city of Chicago, and I couldn't find any that were available, and so we finally went to this bar. And so the way that we accounted for that in the scene was I gave Matthew a line to open the scene with, where Tim Thompson is looking around at all the bar paraphernalia, and John Green somewhat defensively says, "I like their coffee." Anyway, that's how we covered for that. So this was... I tried not to get too ambitious with the camera work, but this one particular shot, I thought it was an important enough character moment to attempt something kind of major. We wound up shooting that speech like 4 or 5 times, and I picked the one... not so much dictated by Matthew's best performance, but by the one where I didn't screw up the camera work. I love both of you guys' comedic timing here.
And these two folks that stepped in for these roles, they were really nice people.
Yeah.
I believe they were an actual couple.
Yeah.
They were an actual couple, yeah.
An actual married couple.
I said, this will work out. So you really don't have to act. Just I think I made a little joke to her. I said, you'll actually have to act like or look like you're paying attention to what he's saying. And it was a little funny, little whatever. And they were really kind people. It was nice of them to be a part of it.
I really like... I was talking to Shane after we had wrapped the shoot about how he interpreted his own character, and one of the things he mentioned was that Tim Thompson doesn't have a filter when he gets an aha moment. And that's what I just saw when he realized that the couple was having an affair. There's just such a look of glee on his face that I really love that he communicates. Tim is just so pure, especially at the beginning of the movie.
I would recommend that you check out the interviews with the cast.
Yeah.
That's a part of these installments here. But Shane Rhodes does talk about, of course, his interpretation of the role and of Tim Thompson. And this scene reveals a lot of that idyllic kind of, or the idealism, I would say, that Thompson has about ethics. And
yeah, my thinking when I was scripting was that Tim is John Green, but 8 years earlier when he got into the business.
So we see how John Green has almost been forced to devolve into something that he has a problem with every day that he would have objected to 3 or 4 years prior to this. The things that he has to kind of resort to make money. And
this is the second of 2 semi-ambitious shots that I tried to put into this sequence. It's on a little dolly track. I really like this moment. It was such a pithy line, and then I feel like you imbued a lot more character into it. It's like you get an entire sense of what you've been doing for the last decade with that one line.
That's true, because even that little half an hour of extra sleep, it feels like years with some of these days he had to get up in the morning.
And I love the idea of, like, Tim Thompson lurches so far ahead in his development by grabbing this phone, and then he's immediately brought back down to, like, the level of an intern. That's also semi-autobiographical. I interned in LA for 2 summers, and it was just... I was so bad on the phones. I was the guy answering the phone and not figuring out what people wanted or... So the idea here is that they raced home, which is why they're panting.
But the perspiration is real. because the room is 85 degrees. So that's real.
And I love the idea of the dame who walks into the detective's office, who instead of in tears or is like this sultry seductress, she's just so unimpressed. And not even disdainfully unimpressed, but bored unimpressed. And then this is hopefully the first scene where we realize that John Green does actually know what he's doing. When he's not being ground down to a pulp by the grind of life, he's actually good at this job.
What made you think it would be Paul?
At first it was just a hunch, you know.
Hunch is good.
Then I kept seeing the same face in the crowd whenever I looked back. A man, maybe a little shorter than...
I'm really happy with how this shot turned out.
It is one of my favorite. It really adds a lot of the odious quality of who we eventually find out is Guy Wicky's character.
Yeah, I don't think there was originally that cutaway scripted. I don't think the script said that there was a cutaway to that shot, but it was something we invented on another day, and they put it in.
A pebble or a moth or maybe just the house settling, whatever it was. I had a full panic attack.
That's one of my favorite. So this actress, Coral Fiedler, is this is one of my favorite scenes we filmed with her. It's also the first scene that we filmed with her. But there's just, I don't know, that specific line where she's talking about a pebble or a moth, or maybe it's just a house settling. She gets this smile on her face. It's a very self-deprecating smile. I think she was able to communicate a lot with just her face and her eyes.
After that, I charged $100.
And this was another little bit of writing stuff that I was trying to subvert the genre of conventions of detective movies a bit. You know, most of the detective movies, the dame comes to the office and she says what's bothering her, and he says, "I'll take the case," and then they cut to something. But in real life, you then talk price. So I wanted to spend half of the first consultation just talking about how he makes money.
It was important to me personally also to demonstrate just how much Green still cared on a personal level for in this case, the victim, or at the very least his clients. But then also how much he cared about the job and perhaps what he could still salvage from what it once was to him before he became so cynical and worn down by it. So up to this point, you've seen Green more or less cynical, kind of quippy, kind of disillusioned, but this is a scene that I felt it was really important to show that Green still did care, and it wasn't just about making money.
Well, it definitely came across in the acting. I just hope it came across in the writing.
It was very kind.
These sequences were interesting to shoot. I thought they would be the hardest things to shoot, but it's amazing how much... Because I just thought that, I don't know what I was expecting. I expected just people to be milling around and, interfering with us, but it was amazing how people just kind of minded their own business and were very polite to us just on the street filming. Nobody was, looking at the camera, as far as I know.
The thing about Chicago, sorry to cut you off, the thing about Chicago, on the weekends, and anybody in Chicago will know this if they spend time downtown, if you're not a tourist or you're not somebody there on business, you'll find that their sections in downtown are very empty. They're very quiet.
Yeah.
So a lot of this is we're walking west along the riverbank, and a lot of these hotels and restaurants are largely quiet, even when it's warm out in summer. Or if you get some warm days in the fall, there can still be a really nice place to chill out because a lot of the folks that commute in for work aren't there.
Yeah.
So we didn't have a lot of that interruption that I was also certainly anticipating on a weekend shot.
Yeah, I think I remember I think we spent a total of 3 days walking around downtown shooting these following sequences, and they always ended sooner than I had scheduled.
Well, who has? The recession isn't going anywhere, and my dad calls me every week to make sure
It was late 2015 when I was at a keyboard typing "The recession isn't going anywhere," and I'm wondering how long before that line becomes outdated. And that depends is one of my favorite. Oh, and then her subsequent softening of that smile was one of my favorite. God, nothing in the script communicated that. It was just the actors.
Now you see here, this is a kind of a funny scene. You'll see we were expecting the train to pull up further.
Way
you can see me
further.
smirk there. And that smirk is the best that I could muster to stifle a laugh, because that train stopped 5 years short of our marks, and it ended up working out well for the cinematography.
Yeah.
Because it required me then obviously to walk toward the camera.
Yeah, it worked out really well.
That wasn't the plan. That was it was something that just kind of happened, and we went with it, and ended up being a good spontaneous opportunity.
Yeah. Because it was... Well, when we were boarding that train, we were all boarding it to go home for the day.
Yeah. Like, I'm not waiting around another 15 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because the first time we had waited for the first train to pull up, and it was way far back there on the platform. We couldn't run down to it and board it. So we're like, okay, we'll wait for one more train, and we'll make it work. And then that's the shot that you saw where it still didn't pull up far enough, but we made it work. This was an interesting day of shooting.
Exceptionally windy day.
Yes, that's the thing. It's, God, I mean, if you look at some of those bushes and trees back there, the wind is kicking up like 20 miles per hour. We're right there on the lake. And it was playing hell with the microphone. This was going to be an unrecordable scene. But then we had these two giant bushes. One is behind the camera, and then one is behind Matthew and Shane, John Green, and Tim Thompson, and it kind of blocked the wind for us, and that's why we got this excellent audio despite the horrible conditions. There was also seaplanes flying above us that day.
And Angry Birds.
Angry Birds. As this scene was another one that was originally scripted to be in some sort of like a diner or an outdoor cafe, but then we just, these businesses want more money than we have available, so we just go to the park.
A word about the businesses in a lot of these places that cooperated with us. Very generous.
Yeah.
Very good of them. But there were a few that reneged on their agreements, unfortunately.
Yep.
And that's their prerogative. But
yeah.
The scene in particular that I'm thinking of, that second scene that you see with Tim and John in the booth there, that was originally supposed to be at another location entirely that would have worked excellent. And we had that sort of situated for months, and because of other commitments they had to pull out of the agreement less than a week before shooting. So that was that was a huge disappointment. That scene really would have benefited from that environment and that setting, but
it still worked out.
We did the best we could. It ended up working.
There's some old movie, I can't remember the name of it, but it's got Mickey Rourke, and he's like, he plans these heists, and at some point in the movie he says something like, in any potential robbery, 100 things could go wrong. If you can think of 30 of them, you're a genius. And the same applies to independent filmmaking, man. It's not about preparing for every contingency. It's about preparing for every contingency and then knowing something's still going to go wrong that you didn't plan for.
The further along we went on these experiences, we would plan so much and put a lot of thought into what we wanted to do, knowing that 90% of it was just going to be scrapped.
Yeah. The
minute we walked on to a set.
Getting these shots of them crossing the street was, I don't know, we were probably standing at that corner for like 15 minutes just watching traffic, trying to see how it lined up well. Oh, and then that shot worked out beautifully.
Ladies and gentlemen, Guy Wiki. No longer blurry. Go on.
He was just like he usually plays comedic roles. He told me he really liked having the chance to play a bad guy, and I think he really sells it. I don't know. He looks unassuming. He doesn't look like your typical muscle secondary antagonist type malevolent killer. But I don't know. But my thinking was that that's exactly what a malevolent killer would present as not a malevolent killer. Anyway, And then Shane's sort of couched over-preparedness is just... I did not dictate any of that. He showed up to set looking like that, and I was like, that's perfect.
We got really... Go ahead. What?
Just that was one of my personal jokes, that the photo that John Green has saved for Tim Thompson's contact is a photo that says, "Hello, my name is Intern." That was one of the few lines that we did in post, was ADR, because there's some generator down in that alleyway which just made all the sound that we got in this scene, this one particular shot, like totally unusable.
Sarge, what does ADR mean?
ADR stands for Automated Dialogue Replacement.
Dialogue replacement.
It's when you record dialogue in post-production and then drop it into the scene.
There you go.
Yep. And then this was also, I don't know, I think I'm proud of this character moment where Tim he knows he's not supposed to text him while he's on the job, but he's just got to send him this one last bit of encouragement, and your eye roll should have gotten an Oscar. Best eye roll.
It was genuine, believe me, it was genuine. It just came to me. Now this is one of my favorite shots. It's, you have that kind of, that ominous, the scoring here. And on that, it was very important for us to select the right scoring for this.
Oh yeah, we
a
haven't
lot
talked
of
about
these,
scoring.
a lot of these shots. Yeah, I think the first one that you'll hear that is on the first following scene.
Briefly, real quick, while in the script, what happened was I scripted it in all my infinite wisdom as she stood at the bottom of the stairs and like just stared at the floor in terror while the stalker walked all the way up to her and then whispered her address in her ear and like sort of smirked and walked on. We get to the set that day and the actress Coral, she turns to me and she's like, she wouldn't stand there and let the stalker walk up to her and whisper in her ear. She'd hightail it up the stairs. And I said, my God, you're absolutely right. And so that's what we wound up filming.
This shot here we did in one take.
Oh, yeah.
This is one take. We're lucky, again, on the weekend, it's going to be a lighter train.
Yeah.
Depending on what direction you're going, what line you're on, of course. But we got that on one take.
Yeah.
And there was a guy sitting across from me who was asking us questions like, are you guys recording something? Who are you with? And he was very cooperative and he was quiet and didn't make any faces at me. And it was, again, one of those spontaneous moments you have to kind of adjust to.
I got the footage I needed as we were rolling into the station. And then this scene, one of my favorite scenes in the script, one of my favorite scenes to shoot.
If for any reason you want to watch the outtakes or the gags reel that is also online, it's for all the hijinks during this shoot.
Yeah.
It was almost next to impossible to keep a straight face with Guy Wiki in between takes.
He's just so funny.
He tries to light a match here. And again, in the outtakes, you'll see...
I think it was 18, 19.
It was a lot of attempts to get this stupid match to light.
It doesn't look windy in any of these shots.
It's actually very windy. So the funny thing was we couldn't use a book of matches. That would have looked, of course, more natural. So we had to do it to the side, kind of out of the frame.
Yeah,
and he was actually striking a box of matches that one would find next to a fireplace. So it was just ridiculously big if you were to see this giant box of matches. But it was the only match that would light. That one right there.
Yeah,
that's from the big box of matches. So I was trying not to laugh. It was very difficult.
And then getting the cigarette to light also, that was like several takes. You just saw 2 shots of him putting the match up to the cigarette, but it was actually like 10 takes to get it to light. I also just... It's not a real cigarette that he's smoking.
I wouldn't be able to do it anyway, so...
Yeah. I hope this came across in the script, but the idea that, like, John Green is not a smoker. He has herbal cigarettes that he uses when he has to play this bit in order to get information. So there's that. And that's the one bit of intel he manages to snag is the name Hodges. When I was writing this, it's funny, I had to kind of solve the case as John Green did. And so I wrote the scene, and I figured he's not going to give him any more intel than just maybe the name Hodges. And so I was like, I didn't have any clue what to do with that information. And you sit at your computer for a couple of months, and you figure out what to do next, which is eventually what John Green does, is he Googles it. The other thing that made this scene complicated was the cicadas, or cicadas, depending on your regional affiliation. Those bugs are making quite a racket in the background, and the hard part wasn't screening out the sound of cicadas. It's that between camera setups, they would change their pitch.
I know, it's like they were deliberately trying to trash the shoot. The entire night was...
So, some of the most post-production audio work done in this movie was on this scene, on the cicadas.
Yeah, the entire night was...
Because
it was up to the cicadas. The cicadas? How do you say it again?
I say cicadas.
Is that the same in Florida?
Yeah, that's how I pronounce it.
Okay. That's weird.
And then one of the things that Matthew, as producer, got me to change was when John Green is glowering at Hodges and they're interrupted by a phone call. My first choice was going to be something ridiculously comedic and out of place, like the
ringtone.
Yeah. And I think Matthew saw an early cut of that, and he was like, "No, it's got to be something more neutral." And in the end, I think he made the right call there.
Unlike the real guy Wiki, Hodges he's not one to have a laugh or be light about anything. So it just didn't make sense. Now here on this scene, a gag reel. We tried this probably 6 or 7 takes, and we could not hold it together.
Great for the blooper reel, though.
I remember even looking at her, and we were still in character, and we could tell, both of us mutually, with nonverbal communication, we're trying to do the best we can professionally to keep these laughs from coming out. And just deliver the lines, do it well, wait for the cut, and then laugh. But, boy, half a dozen of those takes were done before they even started.
It is just 3 shots, but it took longer than you'd think. Also, we shot the confrontation scene out in the courtyard, and this scene where he's on Natalie Goulson's computer in the same night. But for what it's worth, we shot this scene in her room with the computer first.
Poor thing. I remember when we showed up that night and started setting up, she was battling a really bad cold.
Oh, yeah.
And she was on meds, and
she's such a trooper.
She felt horrible. So I said, "Boy, we might not be able to go through with this." And she insisted, and we were good. So it was one of the better scenes. It was an important scene, of course, between John and Natalie.
Yeah, I feel like it. I hope
she did a good job.
I hope it came across in the writing, but I think this is like the first scene where he does something for Natalie to show that he's not just taking her money, where he actually does something kind of useful for her, and then I don't know. They both show the versions of vulnerability in their own way, and they're I don't know. It culminates in the speech that she's going to be given in a couple minutes, and it's like I don't know. It's when they meet as equals. I have a graphic designer friend who also designed the Cold Crash Pictures logo, who created this fake wiki page for me. I sent her all the text.
Looks good.
Yeah, it looks just like a real thing. I'm sure somebody went to Wikipedia and typed in Bradford Guinness. And if you want to pause at any point and check out all those awards that I came up with, I'm pretty proud of those.
Private investigators, security forces, and police of the heat. Like he was some kind of non-vigilante version of Batman.
It's one of 2 Batman references. R. Scott Purdy sent me that headshot, and I think it's just his headshot that he uses regularly in his professional career, but I think it was worked so well tonally for the piece, because there's something malevolent in it, which I think worked really well for the character.
Quick word about the Batman, other than being shot in Chicago. Which one was that? Was Batman?
Dark Knight shot
Dark
in
Knight,
Chicago.
That's right. The building that you see twice.
Oh yeah,
And this is right on the river there, where Green in the first following, and Natalie, and then the second following you see Green and Tim, kind of emerge from behind that pillar in that building. That was the building where the imposter Batman was kind of hung from a noose and kind of slams against the window in the scene.
Yeah.
In the Batman movie, and that was the same building. So it was easy to see why Chicago and those locations there right on the river are so attractive to shoot.
Yeah, it's one of the prettier downtowns. And with the river cutting right through it, you can actually get some decent wide shots. Unlike in New York, where the camera can't see for more than 100 feet in any direction without hitting a building.
There's another building that we use that was also used in that film, and others. We'll get to that.
I like when you kneel down here. It's like you're standing over her and you look kind of like imposing and almost like you're patronizing her, but then you get down to her level, and I think it's a really good example of, I don't know, like blocking to indicate character relationships.
Sure.
That I did not come up with, that you did.
Well, I felt it important also, much like the scene where she first comes by Green's apartment to talk about the stalker. I wanted it. I wanted it to be clear that Green cared, and this is another one of those opportunities. I felt that this is something that he would want to do. He would want to make sure that these clients know that I care, and this one in particular knows.
This particular speech was the pages that I sent out to everyone who tried out for Natalie Goulson's part. So she submitted her audition tape was a reading of this monologue, and of course it was amazing and my favorite, and that was that. So he ends sitting on the bed next to her, and that was something that Matthew came up with. He was like, I really ought to be sitting next to her as an equal by the end of the scene, and that's what we did. And yeah, so this building that Matthew was walking into is pretty famous. You'll see it pop up in Transformers 3 and Batman Begins and The Dark Knight.
I believe they used it for Death Wish, right?
Yeah. In fact, while we were here,
they were shooting it. Yeah.
They were shooting downstairs. Yeah, and we thought, wow, what the coolest way to the coolest reason to screw up a day of production is if an actual Hollywood movie screwed it up.
This is directly across those buildings that we were referring to, so you don't really have to travel far for a lot of these locations. Just go right across the river.
I love that poor beleaguered secretary. It's like putting up with his crap.
Sorry about trying to fool you the other day. It's just business. Wouldn't fool you anyway, though, could I? You're too smart.
I think we gave Guy Wiki, who plays Hodges, like a crash course in how to frisk somebody. He was like, so the script says I frisk him, and he talks for like a minute, so what do I do for a minute? And I don't know, so that caution tape there, we did not put that up. We showed up that day, and the glass had just happened to break earlier that week in this office. And they had the caution tape up, and I was like, that's perfect.
See, I thought it was a terrible eyesore, but then I looked at it in a different way. And I thought, well, maybe the ongoings of this office and with Hodges and Guinness, maybe somebody got thrown through the glass. Maybe something happened, right? So I thought it was a great, just a happenstance thing that really worked into the vibe of who this guy is.
Yeah.
I keep Hodges on retainer for a variety of services. I'm sure he's good at it before.
I like how you play the kind of Mr. Magoo detective. It's I mean, Guinness says so later in the film. He's like, I recognize your shtick. You pretend to be an idiot so that it disarms people and they lower their guards, and this is kind of the scene where we see it in its full glory.
Well, Green has no other play here. You know, he knows that he can't come in and be the outward cynic and try to battle this guy on his own turf. He has nothing to combat him with. You know, he doesn't have a lot of money, doesn't have power, doesn't have influence.
Yeah, one of the screenwriting challenges, like the basic screenwriting challenge, was like, how does he actually solve this case? Because he's got nothing but his mouth,
right,
and Google.
That's right. And 3, the time it takes me to keep count, the count changes. 0. The girl hired me to find out who's following. More, please. She hired me to follow her to find your guy. So you're right. It's not.
And then he concocts this story that he wants to switch sides, which it sounds legitimate enough. It wasn't necessarily supposed to sow the seeds of doubt in the audience's heart, but it had to make sense, and I'm hoping it does.
So, why do you want to switch to the other side? Honestly,
I love that exchange. The length of your pause, his chortle in reply, it's all just perfect.
Said anything about me? It would be nice to just have you around. I bet you and Hodges don't have this much fun.
I love how you're just slaying him with all your wit, and he's just so unimpressed.
Your guy was made. Whether you consider that sloppy or not, there's no point having a ball girl. See him coming.
And this is the one point where Green is telling Guinness something he really can't dispute.
Right.
And this is the one time where you really see Green have the initiative.
Yeah. And it was important from a dramatic standpoint for he walks out of this room without really having acquired any more information than he walked in with. He's got a bit more access, but he doesn't actually know anything.
Sure, it's a prospect of having be more privy, I suppose.
I wanted Guinness to raise every possible concern that the audience might listening to this conversation. Like, why does this rich guy have any reason to listen to this kid for more than 5 seconds?
Tell me what you're after. I swear I'll make it worth your while. I bet you actually believe that. I do.
all right. Last 5 seconds. Tell me what it is you really want right now.
I'm broke. I need a job.
And also, in trying to figure out how he can actually impress Guinness, he's lying by telling a kind of truth. He is broke. And then it ends with the two of them kind of agreeing, yeah, this economy is crap, isn't it?
You've got a naive sort of perseverance I may or may not find endearing.
Of all the characters in the script, Guinness was the easiest, the one whose the dialogue came most naturally to me. His particular brand of, like, I don't know, no nonsense amusement is kind of, I don't know, it just came out natural.
Yeah, Mr. Purdy did a wonderful job. It was
Yeah. He just plays the curmudgeon-y miser so perfectly. He can be like this jovial grandfather type, but then he can just like flip a switch and just be so evil. And then this was a scene, one of the few scenes that we reshot, because the director realized the first time he shot it was bad. The first time we shot this, it was just Green following several paces behind Natalie. And then it was like a couple weeks later into the shoot, I was reviewing the footage, I wasn't liking the footage, and then we came up with this idea of shooting them across the river like this. It's also a big moment of trust where he's asking Natalie for something kind of huge, to stop communicating. and I'm hoping that it feels earned. But she is also expressing some concern here.
This was one of the... It was a couple of shoots that we had where I had to change clothes in public. I had to do my best to kind of go behind one of the little...
go behind like
the cement thing by the bridge there, and I had to do my best to change as quickly as possible before the next passerby. Again, on the weekend, you don't have nearly as many people as you would in the week. But I did my best to take those windows of opportunity, change clothes, go at it again.
Yeah, because a lot of these outdoor shots in this sequence were all shot in the same day, but time is supposed to be... This is supposed to represent like a couple of weeks.
We reshot this as well. This scene.
Yeah, this scene too.
The first time we attempted this, it was an oppressively hot day for late morning. We did this. We shot this right after we got out of work. It was on a weekend.
Yeah.
The initial attempt. And for the morning, it was really, really hot that day, and the lighting just didn't work out. And this is a little bit more of an overcast day. The sound was better.
Yeah.
It turned out to be a really good decision to reshoot this here.
Yeah. Wound up getting a lot more angles on the day that we reshot it. That was one of the big reasons to reshoot something. Is I didn't get enough angles the first time. I think I can tell that in some of these shots, the trees are yellower than in other shots. And it's because the first time we tried to shoot this was like midsummer, and then the second time we shot it was like mid-fall. And then all these sequences in the office with John Green and Hodges the Stalker were also shot in one day, just with wardrobe changes. But they were so much fun to shoot. I think each one of these things that we shot, these little snippets that we shot, yielded at least one blooper reel. And Guy Wiki mentions in the cast interviews that he loved that John would just throw his best lines at like this wit. He'd throw it at Hodges, and just Hodges would just nothing. He'd give him nothing. He'd take nothing from it. And he has no wit. The way he put it is, Hodges has no wit to combat John Green's wit, so he just sits there and fumes. This staircase sequence was also something that we wound up reshooting.
We reshot, yeah.
I think we wound up reshooting it twice. And again, it just came down to we just needed more angles. And then Hodges is stopping Green's entry into the office closer and closer to the elevator.
So I'm not even invited to Christmas party. You're lucky Mr. Guinness hasn't fired you yet.
We shot this exchange probably 3-4 times, and I wound up using the last one because I noticed while I was back home reviewing the footage that we had left all of our bags in the background of a shot. And so I had to use the shot where like they weren't visible.
This shirt in this scene that you see now, I'm wearing the same shirt right now as we speak. It has since been laundered.
And the hat.
And the hat, yeah. A lot of these clothes I bought for the shoot, some of them, and I said, boy, I like this.
This walk and talk shot was something we accomplished with 3 people. It was just Matthew on his phone, me with a camera rig, and then our sound guy walking backwards to keep pace with him. It took us about 3 tries. And now we have Jennifer Chung on the right and Max Fabian on the left. Max and I went to high school in another state, and then we both independently came up to Chicago, and he was down, he was game to do this.
Max was the guy that everybody knows at a party who you meet and maybe spend a half an hour with talking to, and you just love everything he says because he's ridiculously funny. This bar was also oppressively hot. This was a basement bar.
Yeah.
There's an upstairs main portion, and this is kind of the downstairs private party area. That night was really, really hot. So the suit that I'm wearing is... It doesn't breathe well, I guess you could say, but...
This was also a day where when everyone was Chicago got hit with a horrible storm the day that we were shooting this, and so everybody got delayed to the filming site. I got caught in the rain with my equipment, and so we had about 2 hours less time to shoot this scene. Like, we had to get all the shooting done in 3 hours instead of 5 hours type of thing, which is why I wish I got a couple more angles, in particular of Max and Jennifer, but we just didn't have the time that night. This scene is, I think it might be the only scene in the film that is not needed to advance the plot. I mean, he could have easily just called his friend and told her to meet him at the library, but I had concocted this scenario where some jerk in a bar is hitting on this girl, and then some SWAT guy comes in and sweeps her off her feet, and the punchline is they know each other. I had conceived of that as like a commercial for something, and I had thought about filming it as a short film for a long time, and then I thought, this is a great, I don't know, I thought it worked as a cute meet.
What do I do for a living?
You're a journalist.
I cut out a lot of dialogue here where he's guessing her favorite movie, he's guessing her favorite food, and I was like, let's just cut back.
You two know each other.
And I also wanted to redeem the jerk by letting him figure it out on his own that they know each other.
Jennifer was incredibly professional. I really benefited from her insight in some of the advice she would give before takes. She was...
Yeah, she also comes from a very formal acting background, does a ton of theater work and commercial work here in Chicago. Her and Shane and Guy Wicke, I think, were the three who'd been acting the longest. Not that it's a competition, but just...
She could very well... I mean, she very well has the qualities of a director.
Yeah.
She could very easily direct with the way she really commanded kind of organizing the scene and talking about the characters' motives and everything. It was very beneficial.
This walk and talk shot here was kind of incredibly technically challenging. The boom pole wasn't quite long enough. And then... I don't know why I didn't ask you guys to take off your shoes, because the clanging of the shoes, not to malign my own work, but just to describe the challenges for anybody else who wants to shoot an independent film. Make them take off their shoes.
Same here. We were battling a lot of noise issues with the unit there. The AC unit is a heater unit.
Yeah. Ironically, the library was one of the loudest, most audially challenging environments to get footage in.
In the previous scene, we're walking down those corridors. We encountered probably maybe 3 or 4 people who were students who were studying.
Yeah, patrons of the library.
They were actually there, and they were so hidden that you would just kind of turn a corner and stumble upon them in this little partitioned off little kind of study desks.
Yeah,
and
which
I had to go up to one and apologize to her. I said, "We're going to be shooting this. This is after maybe 2 or 3 takes, and the noise was really noticeable." And I said, one of us really ought to go and say something. So I remember saying, "Gee, we'll be done here in a second." She had her headphones in, and they were nice, but there were students in the library studying during all the shooting here.
Yeah, it was very. I was convinced we were going to get thrown out for making too much noise, but you just went over there and greased those wheels.
Yeah.
And we must have done. You figure, how did we get the timing right walking down those book stacks? Because the book stacks end right when everybody's dialogue ends. And the answer is lots and lots of takes.
Yeah, we were trying to work out the timing, so...
We might have done more takes of that shot than any other shot in the movie. I think we probably did at least 20 of just walking down that corridor, saying all the lines... It's so many different things can go wrong just walking down a corridor saying lines. They're like, if anybody trips, it's ruined. If somebody says their line's too fast or too slow, we have to redo it.
On the gag reel, you'll see the chap who was helping with the sound. The boom pole hits the edge of the shelf there, or the ceiling. I think it's a ceiling.
I backed into the wall on one of them. This is a scene that wrote itself. I think like from first draft to last draft, I might have changed like 2 words. I just, for some reason in my head, their relationship and their history and their backstory was so crystal clear. And I like to think, I hope, that only like this brief exchange with them says a lot about it. This is also something we wound up doing, like, I think we got this in 3 takes. Which, me and my first time director ass didn't film any cutaways of any kind. No reverse angles, nothing. I mean, I knew I kind of wanted to get it in one shot, but like, film some sort of insert. That's my advice. And then this is also, the Metropolitan Barbershop was so accommodating and so kind.
Oh, yeah.
Did they actually close down for us? Or did we just come in a day where they were normally closed?
They were not even open. I cannot say enough about the Metropolitan Barbershop. I did a lot of the scouting for locations for the film.
Yeah.
And this was a place I found just on my own when I was trying to just find a place for my own haircut. I had a stylist for years, and they moved away, and I had to find something else, and I kind of stumbled across this, and the first thing you noticed was everything in it, in the building itself, not just the shop, is all preserved from the 1920s, and everything has that kind of Untouchables look to everything. Everything is original. The stairways, the flooring, the post boxes in the wall, the lighting fixtures, everything. And I'd already been going to this place about a year, and this place was one of the first places I thought of to shoot this film, and we have to do a scene somehow before a lot of the script was even written or completed. I think Act 1 was written, and I said we really ought to try to do as much as possible in this barbershop. So the owner was he used to work for Marvel. I believe he was an animator for Marvel. I hope I'm getting that right. And very, very accommodating guy, and the staff as well. We use Pierre as one of the folks who is a barber there, not mine, but a barber, and you'll see him here in a bit. Could not say enough about them.
This scene was originally scripted to take place in a fancy restaurant, which kind of seemed to be my go-to. Every time I begin an anecdote with, originally this place was scripted to be in a blank, there's always a restaurant of some sort, which are hard to secure. But then I thought the barbershop thing worked out so much better than a fancy restaurant, just because, I don't know, I thought of the Untouchables, which opens with like the shaving of Al Capone. You might call that a callback or a reference.
Also, it is a place that you would believe that Guinness would patronize.
Yeah.
This is somewhere he would go, and it would make sense that they would shut the place down for him. He would have that kind of power. So it wasn't just the environment that helped the scene, but it made sense, not only with the character, but...
I also like the idea of... The scene opened with him with that towel wrap on his face. He's just so confident and unafraid of anything. You figure that's got to prove you figure as an audience member that's got to be one of 2 things. He's either got nothing to fear because he's got nothing to hide and totally on the level, or he's just so powerful he knows he doesn't have to fear anybody, which I liked. So when writing these big speeches where John Green is talking about the challenges that his generation faces, and then Guinness's replies, I'm hoping that Guinness never actually says anything that's wrong, but neither does Green. I wanted to kind of represent both arguments, because nothing to me is more compelling than a villain who isn't who doesn't have faulty logic, who thinks that he's right, and who might be right for all we know.
Mr. Purdy did a great job here. The
Yeah.
delivery, the timing.
Oh, it's perfect.
I mean, I had to do my best here, just listening, and I wanted to show how Green, maybe for the first time in the film, you'll see what he was able to keep internal. This is one of the first times you see where you can't help but reveal how small he feels,
Yeah.
and maybe how helpless he is, and how little power he has. Not just for the situation, the case at hand, but for the direction of his life.
Yeah, from a writing standpoint, Guinness is just mopping the floor with him. He's like, "You've got nothing on me. You will never get anything on me that I don't want you to have, and now you're boring me, so get out." And it's true. John Green never had any power in this relationship. He barely even had a lead. He was there on the villain's say-so.
The score selection was very important here as well. I wanted it to kind of almost be the
Yeah.
voice for all the silence, with maybe as soon as Guinness wraps up there.
Yeah.
I really wanted to carry that feeling of helplessness that Green has.
Matthew wound up curating most of this soundtrack. We wound up doing I can't quite remember the exact term for it, but it's where you go to a library of music, and you select what you want, you pay for the rights, and you put it into your film. But Matthew's the one who was at a computer for weeks, probably months, finding clips, finding artists, figuring out. He probably poured more effort into curating the soundtrack than I did rewriting the script. Oh, and that was our second of 3 Ultimate Michael Crichton references.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the film, it started with he was reading Rising Sun, because it's a movie about it's a book about a detective, and Rising Sun because it's the beginning of the film. And then for this scene, I picked Eaters of the Dead because he's given up on the case, sorta, and he's about to be eaten alive by Natalie.
What's the book that Green puts in his pocket under the chair?
Rising Sun.
That was a Rising Sun. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a few more scenes he's got a book, and all the same author. Fun little fact. Sarge that is your favorite, right?
One of them, yeah. And this is, as with all Act 2 breaks, this is kind of supposed to be... He was calling her... And this is his biggest moment of cowardice in the film, when he calls Natalie, hoping that she'll give him permission to give up. And she doesn't. And that's kind of a motivating influence, to be like, oh, I am being pathetic, which leads into one of his more proactive moments, when he actually does some finagling.
This is one of the more fun scenes to shoot, because there wasn't a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
You wanted to get things right, of course, but we spent a lot of time, if anything, that the bit that received the most attention was the choreography, so to speak, of this moment where Green and the accountant make contact here.
Yeah.
We did this 4 or 5 times, and my left shoulder got sore after a couple of them. We got a little too close, and
yeah, we did takes where like the notebook hit the ground and the papers just went nowhere, and then other takes where like the papers went everywhere, and there had to be the right amount of paper splash. But yeah, that's it's called the Plaza of the Americas, I think. That's a statue of Benito Juarez, who was the president of Mexico during the American Civil War. And it's tucked away. It's right off of Michigan Avenue, but it's tucked away, and it's got light foot traffic, and it was just like a perfect place to do that scene. I think we shot it all in like 45 minutes.
We wanted everything to make sense geographically as well. Like,
yeah,
these folks would be working in this area of the city, and it's not so obscure that if you do get a glimpse of some of the surrounding buildings in the area and the streets, that you would know where these places were in the city, and these are where these folks would work. So
yeah,
it wasn't only good for the look of it, but it made sense for the purpose of why those folks would be down there in the first place.
So we had to...
Special effects department was consisted of 2.
Our friend was nice enough to let us film all these scenes in his apartment. And we were like, can we trash your place? And he was like, sure. And so I was in planning for this scene, I was trying to figure out how to have a stab, how to have him get stabbed and have it look not so much like a god-awful indie flick from a first-time director. And in the end, I just thought, let's not show the stabbing. Let's just show some point of contact, some contact between them. And then it's like, oh, I've been stabbed. And I really like how it worked out. I'd rather... Half of independent filmmaking, no-budget filmmaking, is figuring out what you can't do based on your budget. And that was like the second fade to black in like 5 minutes. I love that Let's Go Cubs sticker on the door, which we did not place there. That was just... I mean, all the places that we filmed, of course, were real places, and we actually did very little set decorating for the most part. This is like my favorite little dumb joke in the movie, is that he keeps his key under the mat of his neighbor's
across the way, yeah.
door. And that the second Tim sees that, he's like, yeah, Green would do something like that, wouldn't he? As many shots of that Paul Powell poster as possible, please.
Hey, how you doing?
Well, this is much of a defensive posture that Green can assume here.
I've been worse.
It always makes me laugh.
So this book here that he's reading, what is the title here?
Oh, that's The Lost World.
That's The Lost World.
And it's The Lost World because his case imploded and he's given up. And yeah.
Used to ask me, what's the best way to get stabbed? I always used to say, make sure they don't hit any vital organs. Now I just say, like this.
That's a really hammy line that I think you did really well to deliver.
Speculation like that is exactly what got me stabbed in the first place. I'm done with the whole speculation thing. It wasn't a robbery. Why are you here?
Again, just like the defeated... Again, just like the defeated hopelessness of it. I just love when anyone in this film hears like a great line. It's just like, no, I mean, not a clever line, a clever wordage, and they're just totally unimpressed.
When Shane and I first started discussing this scene, we started blocking everything, and we wanted to make sure that it was clear that Green was comfortable enough with Tim to be kind of casual like this, almost kind of borderline rude.
Yeah. Yeah, this was an important scene,
but it was
character-wise.
Rude in the way that maybe, you know, a colleague you've been working with for years or whatever, or a family member, it's nothing personal, but it was important that this exchange was natural in that there was really no concern with professionalism.
Yeah.
Clearly he's not dressed that way.
And Tim is finally being more naturally assertive. Not rude assertive or aggressive assertive, but just honest assertive.
Sure.
For perhaps the first time.
Much like in the scene in the booth where he had that ethical conflict and said you can't blackmail folks here.
Yeah.
Why are you here? I'm blue. No. Black ball.
Another joke I'm pretty proud of.
Well, even there, he had to think twice about
I became a cop
the color.
right out of college.
Make sure we sign the right color.
Developed an antagonistic relationship with my commanding officer.
So there's at least one person in the comments on my YouTube channel who assumed that all this backstory that John Green is giving is a lie because of later revelations in the film. Just to be clear, canonically speaking, this was to be the truth. That's what I was thinking as I was writing it. That all this is true. He did get fired from his job by antagonizing this awful commanding officer of his. And then as a kind of cap to Tim's assertiveness, it ends with a joke, a dumb joke, giving Green a hard time.
And again, I believe that really caps off that casual familiarity that they've established.
Yeah.
He's able to joke with them there. Tim wouldn't have done that earlier.
Right. Not only that their relationship wouldn't allow it, but he would not have yet learned how to give someone a hard time by being sarcastic. And then again, this was another moment I wanted to subvert convention a little, where like they've had their moment, but instead of cutting, oh, he's got rent to pay. And like the how do you say, the hustle never ceases. Doesn't matter how many stab wounds you've got. Now,
this is another day in the life of John Green, really. I mean, the majority of his days. Haggling on the phone or pressuring people to pay him. Dealing with hang-ups. It's just a day in the life.
And I like that you kind of resent that caller. You're like, she's probably just Googling it right now. Because that's what you do for a living. So you would know when somebody's doing that. And then if I were, I don't know, the day on the set, I took one look at your biceps and I was like, this guy has not been convalescing for 3 months. But whatever, small price to pay.
Uh-huh. Horrible tan lines.
Now that was not real booze, if I remember correctly.
Those were,
I think that was like Dr. Pepper or something that we watered down.
Yeah, that was Dr. Pepper. The pills. What were the pills?
Placebos.
No,
certainly.
they were. It wasn't.
That's what you told me on set.
Well, they weren't meds. They were. Gosh, I'm trying to think. Was it zinc?
Oh,
I don't remember what it was.
I love how you see him standing there, but you check the hallway anyway. That was not in the script. Oh, this asshole.
This scene here again. I really implore you to watch the gag reel. To Sarge's left, this of course is his cameo. To his left, there is a sound guy, Drew, who he didn't do it on purpose, or maybe he did. I think toward the end he did, but I could not deliver lines or even keep a straight face with this guy. Plus, we hadn't eaten. We had already been shooting for about 7 hours at this point, and of course the oppressive heat, all kind of combined into this. The circumstances, you could not keep a straight face. But it was fun.
The idea here was that John Green got angry enough at that guy for dissing Michael Crichton that he shoved him or something.
What was that book there? That was still a Lost World.
Yes, okay. Lost World. And that Yelp review line is probably my personal favorite joke in the movie. This is also one of my favorite performative moments, this entire scene. Because you've just got to be a mixture of assertive and vulnerable. And then much of her scene is just reacting to what you say.
So what then? Go back to being as helpless as I was before? Move to another city?
Whichever you can live with.
I love how soft her look is.
Another important moment where the characters, we've already seen Tim do it twice, but now Natalie is righting John's ship, keeping him honest, keeping him from deviating from not only his professional obligation, but even through his own personal journey to not lose himself and not become so disillusioned that he's just going to give up.
Really happy with that insert. Not only because you'd clearly been doing crunches that morning.
No. Actually, the house we were shooting this in, he had an endless supply of ginger ale, and I don't normally drink soda. So when it was there, I said, "Yeah, let's have some of that." I think I had maybe 4 or 5 cans worth. So to say that I was all puffy and bloated was an understatement.
show off.
It was so uncomfortable. I said, "Oh gosh, this is that scene too."
What I actually meant was that I'm really happy with the way that the bandages turned out looking.
Yes.
We used real medical supplies.
Fantastic special effects. No, it was. It really was.
Oh,
it wasn't.
okay.
It wasn't the Carrie kind of pig's blood where it was like pink water.
Yeah.
It was very. The consistency was disturbingly realistic.
Yeah, and fun fact, fake blood will stain anything and everything. So be careful with it. Like, we had to make sure it wouldn't drop on... where we were filming this, we had to make sure it wasn't dropping on the floorboards, because it would just stain the floorboards forever. So, my shoddy camera work kind of maybe made it unclear, but he's going into a kit full of medical supplies to redress his wound there. Because he couldn't just sit there and deliver lines this nakedly vulnerable with absolutely nothing to do.
You're not like any of my other cases.
I really like what she did with her eyes. She looked down before she moved to the side. And
So we see here, it does harken back to the scene with John and Natalie in her room when he kind of kneels.
yes.
And then now she does, and it really does kind of bring it.
When things got hard,
It kind of completes that circle with their relationship.
Yeah, because
She was vulnerable, and now he's vulnerable, and it just comes out beautifully here.
Yeah, in the script, I had nothing for her to do.
so what's the point?
And either you or her, I think one of you two, was like, I should circle around, or Natalie should circle around and kneel down next to him. And yeah, I think it worked out really well. One more final example of subverting genre convention is that if this were a Humphrey Bogart film, this is where she would sleep with him, and then in the next scene she would betray him. And I wanted to subvert all those tropes. I didn't want a personal pet peeve of mine is when there's a girl in the movie who's there to like sleep with the main character and then betray the main character, or even either one. Anyway, I wanted to depict just a friendship, which I hope came across. And then suddenly the scene switches from sweet to hopefully foreboding.
What do you think he'd do?
We actually had good time continuity. The timestamp for that text was 6 p.m.
This is why I'm never having kids.
Another cheap joke that I'm very proud of. So this shot, as you can probably tell, the Canon T3i isn't a fantastic low-light camera. I think it was just me and Matthew to get this shot. I think it was, if I remember correctly, I was holding the camera rig on my shoulder and a light with my other hand. And, we didn't want to be sitting there doing takes all day. So I think we did 3 takes. 2 of them at different camera speeds. And anyway, I just wound up picking the one that I thought worked best.
Just dealing with the natural green and red lights and the zebra crossing and
Yeah.
all that, of course, we just had to deal with the public, and it worked out.
Yeah.
A reader microphone, a shotgun microphone, 2 walkie-talkies, a baby monitor, and a yak bag.
Sorry, that's another joke that I'm really proud of. How many different things has mankind invented that record sound? And I initially planned, I wanted this is Hodges' last moment in the film. It's when he exits this room all angry. I originally thought about doing something grander for him, but in the end I just thought he just skulks off, as he always does.
Where's my intern? What intern? Tim Thompson. Is that his name?
This was a scene that we actually shot on 2 successive nights. Because we didn't get all the footage that we needed on the first night of shooting. And, I don't know, I think it was a little ambitious with the number of angles that we got, and every time we switched angles, we had to reset up the lights. And this was actually, we were filming this kind of early in the schedule, like definitely in the first half of the shooting schedule, with all these scenes.
Luckily, the first responder was a friend.
Now, in the script, they just sat in the office for the entire scene. But once we secured this location, there was this amazing balcony they're actually standing on the same balcony that there's a shot in Batman Begins where Batman is standing on one of the rotundas just above them. There's I don't know, a character from Transformers 3 who's standing on that very same balcony, and the lighting was perfect.
It's a really pretty scenery there. This is looking north on the with the south bank of the river.
Yeah,
the corncob parking structures are kind of over off to my left shoulder here, and
yeah, which also make a lot of appearances in movies.
So at night, it's a really, really good scene.
Oh, and then first it was the cicadas, and then it was these police sirens, which I'm just sitting here pointing out the worst parts of my skill sets. But yeah, getting those sirens to match up, because of the Doppler effect and whatnot, it was just murder. So all I could do really was just put in as much random siren cacophony as possible. From a writing standpoint, this is the most explicit that John Green got with his complaints about his life and his generation, and I figured I was trying to figure out how much was too much for him to say. In the end, I figured he can say as much as he likes, he can complain as much as he wants, so long as Guinness has an intelligent reply. And in the end, I don't think anything that they say in this scene is incorrect.
Maybe not. How about a foot in the door? Do you think that's what's up to you? No. I just wish I hadn't kept promising you that throughout college. Right. So people promise you things when you were a kid, and when you were an adult, some of them didn't come true. Do you think that's unique to your generation? No.
Yeah. Again, my favorite kinds of villains are the ones that you can see their point of view. Even if you don't agree with it, you see why they think that.
No future for Social Security, bloated pension system. Your generation inherited the greatest economic service.
Since John Green could run for office here with his speech.
And then started to mortgage our futures just to keep yourselves within the blooded system.
That's the nastiest thing he says in the whole movie. And of course, from a blocking perspective, once we got them out on the platform, out on the balcony, I had to figure out at what point they walk back in, and I thought the best part would be that one moment where Guinness has a less than brilliant response for the first time for something that Green says, and so he might be feeling a little defensive. So he goes back and sits down. That shot that we just saw, that scene with them on the balcony, is the only instance in this film in which Bradford Guinness is not sitting in a chair. So this counter shot that we're getting here between Purdy and then Matthew, these I remember are distinctly from two different nights of shooting, but I think they match up pretty well. I'm not a fan of the Dutch angle as a rule, which is that slight tilt to the camera, but I don't know, I thought if there was ever a time to take advantage of it, it'd be in this kind of scene, because most detective films end with shootouts and chase sequences, and with no budget filmmaking, you can't film that, you can't even script that. So people kind of demonstrate character and pull out drama basically with these overwrought speeches.
So these shots here are on a separate wing of the same building.
Yep.
Where there's all the kind of cubicles and that. But people don't realize a lot of the inside portion of the police station looks like an office. It's like
yeah, at first
partitions and cubicles and computers, and that's it. It would very much just resemble any other office that you would find at a law firm or accounting firm. And it was a separate wing of the office, so it multi-use for this particular location.
Yeah, when I was scripting it, I was thinking, oh man, where am I going to get a police uniform? How am I going to stock this office with, how am I going to find a place with, bars and, these guys in orange jumpsuits? But then, of course, I was like, well, That's not actually what police officers look like. This speech about the Crusades almost got cut a couple times. Actually, this scene runs I think 14, 15 minutes long. The first draft was 19, 20, 21 minutes long. I cut out a lot of dialogue. I just kind of let both of them let it all hang out here verbally. I
remember seeing this in the script, and
yeah.
I wanted to make sure I double check. These are my lines, are they? Because this is a novel.
Yeah.
So it was.
Purdy was a real trooper.
Yeah, he did fabulous.
This massive speech. In the end, I decided to let it run as long as it does just because I think it's a great anecdote from history. It's also true. I read it in a book about the Crusades. But yeah, in the original script, he wound up having 3 monologues of this length. And one of them I cut out entirely, and another one I cut down a lot. This is the one that made it in totally, fully formed. And I like how many different reactions you get on your face while he's giving this speech. It actually cut to you a lot, because there's a lot of good material in the counter shot of you just reacting to it.
You're going to wind up as a footnote, as far as I can tell. You won't. Why were you having the girl
Finally, let's get down to business already.
Why were you having the girl follow?
There's that shadow on the bottom left hand of the screen. I don't know where it's coming from, but it's not our equipment.
Second Batman reference.
Yep. I like it. I got a lot of pride for The Dark Knight because it was shot here in Chicago. I was here in Chicago when it was being filmed, and got a lot of affinity for that movie.
To offer her a chance to join a perfectly legal business venture that needs nice, personal, trust.
Again, kind of updating the detective genre for the modern era. Instead of prostitutes, it's cam girls, which is much more innocuous on the surface, just by the nature of the business. Which Purdy is gonna, or which Guinness goes on about at length here, is that there's no direct contact with the clients, and you don't have to worry about police raids, and in the end, it's perfectly legal. And I'm hoping that was enough of a twist that the bad guy is actually not breaking the law.
Baby girls, presumably? No. There's no need for brothels. We've got cam girls. Virtual.
But then, of course, I was stuck with this thing where, okay, so he's not breaking the law. He's trying to offer ladies employment. How do I make that wrong? Because, I don't know, not to get too political, but... Or not political, but if somebody is a cam girl, I don't care. I don't hold that against them. I don't think that's a bad move. That's their life, if that's what they want to do. So I had to figure out how to make that actually evil, a cam girl recruitment thing, which leads us to this line coming up here.
Because I wanted to see how the girls reacted to being watched.
And that was just one of the most dramatically significant lines for me to get right. Because it made what he did evil. That shot there, I don't know if it was clear, but that shot where he's standing at the window is him looking across the way and seeing Natalie working in her office. And that's all it took. He just saw this girl and decided he was going to do what he was going to do. And this line, too, I don't think... This line just popped out of me. I don't think I changed one word between first draft and final draft.
I see these things, and you know what I think to myself? Violence is making.
Such excellent delivery. We had this in the trailer.
Yeah.
Just excellent delivery there.
So perfect. The lighting is perfect. His face is perfect. Delivery is perfect.
In the city that works, you are Lisa.
I was also proud of that line. Chicago's got a lot of nicknames. Windy City is his most popular, but that's not its best nickname. It's a city that works, city of broad shoulders.
Take it from somebody who doesn't care enough to lie. You are not special.
And then this speech here wound up being, I don't cut to Guinness in this entire speech. Because I really liked what you were giving the camera here. Because nothing he says is wrong here. You are not special. And you have just kind of been talking your way to power here.
Bouncing around where you don't belong, and yet here you are. Standing before me, having acquired precisely the information you sought when you first began.
That wobble there is the yours truly's legs getting tired.
I don't remember. I don't recall if this scene was a part of the shoot that took place after midnight, but it was getting pretty late.
Oh yeah. There was one day, I think it was the shots that we're looking at here. It was our latest night. I always tried to get everybody home before 10, but this one ran to like 1, 2 a.m.
The office granted us an additional day to redo things.
Yeah.
Initially we were granted 3, but then we were given that extra, so we really had to get what we needed.
Yeah.
Without having to force ourselves to ask for another day. We really didn't want to do that. So we wanted a night shot. We wanted it to give kind of a different feel than what you see in the bright afternoon. There was a lot of natural light, of course, pouring into that office at that time, and I really like how this came out.
So, from a writing standpoint, it's perhaps, and of course the white fade out because it's to make the audience think, wait, was that it? Because the thing is, there's not a ton of closure here yet, which is where hopefully this last scene comes in. I'm really proud of that transition, where the speech slowly goes digital, and then, we're listening to a recording. He doesn't even let it finish.
So this took place in the NBC Plaza. And it was raining that day, so we were lucky enough to be under this kind of canopy of trees.
Yeah. The rain would pick up, and I'd pack all the equipment down, and then the clouds would part for a little bit, and we'd pull everything back out. We ended up getting a lot of... This is one of the last scenes that we shot. And we were all troopers by that point. We were all getting good at getting the footage we needed as quickly as possible.
After all that work insists.
Also,
right there was a delivery that he was able to get through it, because if you again watch the gag reel, this shoot is
plagued with pigeons.
Yes, it was pigeons. It was people couldn't keep it together. It was a fun day, but
this was another one of my. This shot here was important for me anyway to try and get right, because I think it's a pivotal point in the drama. He owes Natalie some apologies. She was the one who was proactive about her own situation. She brought him this opportunity. He gave up, and she's the one who kind of yelled at him into picking it back up. And I feel like his apology was a way of acknowledging that.
Yeah. I just might drop out and come point.
Again, perfect delivery on that sardonic wit.
I believe that was the last shot, the last shooting day.
It was the second to last.
Was it the second last?
Yeah, because the very last shooting day was the one in the bar.
I'm sorry. So yeah, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, second to last shooting day.
That's right.
And then for all these little outros, they weren't quite bloopers, but I tried to put like little moments that I didn't want to leave on the cutting room floor. A lot of these are just between takes. Like the camera was between a take.
So this ending credits score selection, it was important to track selection to kind of bridge the divide between the eras. You still have that kind of detective era sounding. Wait a second. That's a trumpet. Okay, so we have that. Sounds like your Elliot Ness days.
Yeah.
Something a little jazzy, but then you have something a little edgy. Like now you hear some electronic aspects that kind of bridge that divide between old and new.
Very hard to get that right. Most of the if you go to one of these websites that licenses music and you just type in detective, it all comes out super duper cheesy, like an episode of Whose Line Is It Anyway? My final dumb joke is man with no taste because he insulted Michael Crichton. Thanks for listening.
Congratulations to you.
If you are still listening.
It's a good film, good writing.
Thank you.
I thought it came out well. It was a pleasure shooting it with you.
Excellent acting. Yeah, if there was, I swear I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but the one bit of praise that I got I was most proud of was that the actors were like, you get your shots quickly, and there's not a lot of downtime. We show up and we work and we go home, which I really, really appreciated.
So I encourage you to watch all the other fun footage, the gag reel that I've probably mentioned it's 5 times now, and the interviews with the cast is... I really enjoyed being present there throughout all the interviews with some of the cast members that showed up there, and it's fun to watch. Check that out after this, and I appreciate all the support that the Cold Crash followers, the positive and some of the good positive critiques, I should say, the criticisms. We take that into account, and it's a big deal. So we appreciate the followership and the support.
Yeah, all you guys listening, thank you very much.